let's pivot a little bit. And you've been on the trail as a candidate, you've been on the trail covering the candidates, and you've been observing the trail and endorsing in your role in ASW. And one of the things, going back to Jeff, what you were saying about the decisions that loom ahead for us economically, is the fact that there seems to be, on the congressional level, a little bit of dysfunction. I think people would agree. And I'm wondering, from your various perspectives, how do you think that's affecting a trickle-down level? Not just from what's happening in Washington, but how it's really getting to the streets of the cities and towns, places like Boston, places like Lexington, and affecting people on Main Street as opposed to what's happening down on K Street. Again, I'll start with you if that's okay.
In terms of the budget and the...
Yeah, and how and sort of the congressional dysfunction and, or I shouldn't say dysfunction, that's probably pejorative, but...
No, I think that's an accurate description.
And I don't think any of us can argue with that.
I think people are always saying, like, well, this is the worst it's ever been, and I don't know about that. There was that one time that the senator got caned on the floor, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty bad, I'd say. That was back a long time ago. But, I feel that, you're going to see that. I mean, if government stops working, then that means federal funds stop flowing. You're not going to be able to resurface a road or get that park that you want, because nobody can work together, and keep the skids greased there for the funds. I don't know if it's going to change that much with the new session, regardless of who comes in. I feel right now Congress that there's so much partisanship and so much animosity between both sides that it's hard to see that once there's a new president come or Obama wins re-election, January 20th. I don't know if that changes. It's tough to see just because of the animosity there.
Okay.
So kind of looking at it from a state perspective and a federal perspective, on the federal level, we're really looking at, the way it stands now, a Congress, a House of Representatives that is democratically Republican controlled, and a Senate that is democratically controlled. The Senate race here in Massachusetts, part of the reason it's so hotly contested is because potentially the outcome here could dictate which way the Senate goes. And so goes the Senate, often goes our Supreme Court, and in terms of the House, I believe it's something in the neighborhood of about 25 seats that would have to be picked up by Democrats to take back the House. So I think we're going to continue to see a lot of partisanship, and from the perspective of an advocate working in healthcare, for us what that looks like is we always have to be on the defensive. So we're always fighting to avoid cuts. We're fighting to keep our doors open. We're fighting not to see, literally the budget balanced on the backs of mothers and small children and, the folks who need services the most when the economy is down. So we don't get to be as aggressive as we would like to be in looking at things like, say, health disparities, for example, because we have to take 3 steps back and deal with access and how are folks even getting in to see the doctor, and are they having to decide between filling a prescription or putting food on the table. So it sets us back from really being able to set the type of priorities we would like to have when Congress is in such gridlock. On the state level, it's a little bit different because we have a Democrat-controlled legislature and a Democratic governor. Now, Governor Patrick isn't up for re-election, so he's not going anywhere unless he gets a phone call from Obama and decides to move to his administration. So on the state level, we're able to kind of move forward with things, and we're seeing some things now. There's conversation going on that we may talk about taking up a campaign to try to raise the minimum wage here and really doing some things on a state level that would really help to start, raise people up and improve the overall standards for folks who are middle class and lower class and in working communities where they're currently earning minimum wage. And then the other thing I'll add quickly is that after the election, before new folks are sworn in, on the state or federal level, we're going to have something called a lame duck session down in DC. And it's being hailed the mother of all lame duck sessions, and that's because we have to deal with this fiscal cliff. And the latest that I've read today, and some of the other panelists might chime in on this, is that there's this gang of 8 senators, bipartisan, Republican and Democrat, coming together to try to solve this fiscal cliff that we're facing. So dealing with cuts that have to do with sequestration and the Budget Control Act and all of these attempts to help rein in our spending and drive down the debt. So I would say there is some hope there, the fact that these folks are working now to try to come up with a solution so that we can move forward in November and get things done before the end of the calendar year. So, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic about the coming together of sides to work on that. But I think once we move forward into January, we're going to continue to see a lot of gridlock on the federal level of folks not being able to hash out a whole lot in terms of compromises. But on the state level, I'm hopeful that because we do have folks who are all like-minded, we might be able to move forward with some things.
Echoing some of the issues that were mentioned earlier, the biggest thing I think going on right now that people are going to vote on is jobs in the economy. Jobs in the economy is what everybody's pretty much talking about in the news media, and it's tough for a lot of people out there, and including myself. I have a young daughter. She's 10 months old. My wife and I we're starting a family, trying to save, and it's tougher. And what you have right now in Washington is two competing worldviews of how our government should run, and they are diametrically opposed. They are really, really opposite. There's the progressive liberal vision of what government should be, and there is the limited government, conservative vision of what government should be. And to break those two down, when our founding fathers wrote these documents that set up our government, they believed that a local government is what governs best, and I subscribe to that theory. I don't think that heavy-handed, one-size-fits-all solutions and laws that come down from the federal government are what's best for, say, Massachusetts, or even for what is different from Boston as it is to Springfield or Worcester. The people who are engaged in their community, like the people gathered in this room tonight, know what's best for their community. And everyone in this room knows what's best for their family, not some unelected bureaucrat who's going to dictate what we all can eat, drive, where we can live. The market is what best determines that from myself as a Republican's perspective. And there is two competing worldviews down in Washington right now. The Democratic Party of old used to be one of JFK, of common sense fiscal conservatism, not believing that you can go into debt to try to stimulate the economy, and government spending is what stimulates the economy. When you look at how jobs are created by people who start businesses, entrepreneurs, and they pay taxes, and the government gets that money. And now, so supposedly in this new theory, in the new paradigm of what the Democratic Party wants to do to create jobs, they take that tax money and they recycle it and they shift it and they spend it on a bridge or a road, where they think that that's going to stimulate job growth, when it's actually the opposite. Now, believe me, I'm in favor of building bridges, roads, schools, hospitals, if there's an economic need. But you don't wake up one day and say, oh, we need jobs, what should we build? Oh, well, let's build a bridge. That's not the way to go about it. If somebody starts a company down the street and everybody who works for that company lives in an area where it's difficult to get to, you have an economic need to build a new road, and that's the proper role of government. Not to try to stimulate the economy through wasteful government spending, not to tell each and every one of us how to live our lives, what we can eat, where we can live, etc. And if you think it's starting now down in New York City and up in Cambridge, you can't buy a 16 ounces or larger in New York City.
Big gulp.
Yeah, you can't buy a big gulp in New York City. The idea of that the government's going to say that you can't buy a certain size soda is just absurd. And that's a small, famous example, but there's lots of other examples just like that. So I don't know what is going to occur down in D.C. As far as with the partisan gridlock, but I'm almost of the mind that if people aren't doing anything down there, then they're not doing things that could affect us in a bad way. And we'll get into taxes and stuff probably in a few minutes, and how we actually solve these problems, but that's where I see it today.